Okay, guys, we have a new episode of the Mindshift podcast, but one thing my dad and I have been talking about is starting a new chapter of this podcast, one of which we want to dive into your questions that you might have about the scriptures or about God, from whether maybe you don't believe anything, maybe atheist, agnostic, maybe you're Hindu or Buddhist or even Catholic or Mormon or Muslim. We want to know and we want to hear from you guys what questions you might have about God. Dad, introduce us. Maybe you can set the premise of what we want to dive into with this next chapter of the podcast.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I have both been talking about is that an area that we talk about a lot and that we really spend so much of our life in is helping people process who Jesus is, what the scriptures teach. And we really don't do that on this podcast very much.
No.
And so we wanted to create a space here where we could answer the hard questions you might have about God or about life or about faith or about the Bible. And I think it'd be so much fun to dive into some of the passages that are so obscure and so bizarre, and really we haven't found a lot of good answers for them. I'd love to dive into those. But more than that, I'd like to address the questions that may keep you from believing in God or keep you from really connecting deeply to the truths in the scriptures, or just the questions that really matter to you. Not how many angels can stand on the pin of the head of a pin, but the questions that actually matter to you and that can help your life move forward.
I also want to attack some of the more bizarre questions that we may have over time. But what you're saying is you want the question, what's that one question that's holding you back from stepping into a relationship with God?
Yeah. And I also just want to go through like maybe even my view of Genesis and my whole view of how humanity started and those really obscure, difficult passages early on, and then go to different places in the Bible where I feel like we really haven't adequately addressed those questions. And I think I have a unique perspective that may not be historically normative, but is a better answer to what the scriptures say than what we've had over the last 1,500 years.
Amazing. Well, let's jump into this next episode.
All right, here we go. The very people who want government to pay their bills are the very people who hate the people who actually pay their bills, because government does not pay your bills. Our taxes pay your bills.
I don't think the billionaires are inherently good. They're inherently good at scaling companies. And why would we not want to take the greatest minds inside of our culture and weaponize them in a positive manner to make our government more efficient?
It's absurd to me to act like Bezos is more inherently evil than Gavin Newsom. Can you not see that these people are made of the same material, except that this person has a genius to create wealth and this one has a genius to create bureaucracy?
You're listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Took you 3 intros.
It did take me 3 intros. We're back into the old days where I really could never get this show started.
But it's because you're calling it Battle Ready. You're going old school.
Because the hat. I got the hat on.
Yeah, you got Battle Ready on your mind.
I got Battle Ready on my mind, which a lot of things are on my mind. Mm-hmm. We've talked about making a little bit of a shift.
Which is maybe why you're calling it Battle Ready instead of Mindshift.
Probably. Though we shouldn't call it Battle Ready either. We've had different iterations of this pod, different seasons of this pod, different chapters. And it feels like this chapter isn't coming to a close. Mm-mm. We're just starting to open up a new chapter, a new book. Do you ever start that? Do you ever do that where you start a new book and then you have an old book and then you started a new one and then you just have your 5 chapters in on one, your 2 chapters in on the next, and
Well, I think sometimes it's just a matter of what is going from a back burner to a front burner, or what are we more interested in, or what conversations do we think are more essential to have with our audience.
And I'm pulling up because I want to see how many episodes we've done as Mindshift. 82 episodes.
Oh, wow.
This will be the 82nd. Oh, this will be the 83rd episode. Which is kind of exciting.
We're almost at 100.
We're almost at 100. We've been doing this.
That's amazing.
Wow. I guess we've been doing it for 2.5 years as Mindshift.
That's amazing. That's so good. That's almost,
It's pretty exciting.
Yep. Because I guess we hit a rhythm, but it's not every single week.
We've almost hit every single week
Yeah.
for the last 1.5, 2 years.
Yeah. So we just finished Easter.
And
And Monday after Easter is always, it does feel like the calm after the storm.
yeah.
And it's interesting because there's several emotions that you feel, and I think it's what you feel after you finished a pretty epic event. Like if to me, it's like if you, the day after the Super Bowl or the day after the NBA Finals or the day after the Masters, because I do think you get an adrenaline rush of something really important, something really epic, something that's all consuming. And then the next day, you just, one, you're tired, but two, you can't handle the same level of emotional excitement and intensity. So your whole nervous system just drops.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if I was tired, resting, or depressed.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
it was interesting. Okay, so for those of you that are familiar with Easter, but you maybe don't go to church, or haven't been involved as heavily in church, it is such a big Sunday for us, and so a lot goes into it. And what is interesting for me is like I'm waking up yesterday on Monday, because we shoot this pod on Monday or Tuesday usually in the week, and I didn't do anything on Sunday. Like I'm on, I guess, your team. I'm a part of the overarching creative team historically. But from Friday, Good Friday, we were driving to Calabasas, and then Saturday we did like a dry run here at Mosaic on Saturday night for all the volunteers and leaders, which was actually really great because on Sundays it's not really for the team. It's not really for the volunteers. It's for the people that
all
come
the guests
in.
who come.
All the guests who come and all of the people who come in weekly. And I think volunteers and leaders know that. And so it's always nice to have like one gathering where it's like low pressure as far as like being on the team. It's just to lean in, to enjoy, to worship. And then Sunday is when we get going, and our teams are amazing. Our teams are so amazing.
But think about the dynamic there, that you have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, of which you are one of them.
Yes.
And, that give their entire weekend and maybe even longer in preparation so that other people who they do not know can actually have a life-changing experience. I mean, it really is an extraordinary study on human service and
it's amazing.
Kindness.
And we have, Mosaic's always been a volunteer-driven culture. I mean, so much so where you've had as little as like 9 or 10 staff people on staff at Mosaic, and you've really just believed that the church should be driven by the people who are part of the church. And I know that that's been murky in the past with other churches kind of taking advantage of volunteers. And I think the beautiful thing about Mosaic, especially even in Hollywood, I don't know that South Pass as well or Calabasas as well as I do know the LA campus, the Hollywood campus. There's lawyers, teachers, doctors, there's creatives, there's directors, there's writers, there's all these amazing, beautiful people, dancers. There's all these amazing people who have outside jobs, who just go, you know what, on Easter weekend and on Sundays, like we're here, this is part of our team, this is part of our church, and it's our community, and they own it and they just build it, and we would not be able to happen. It would not happen the way that it does without the amazing people that we have. And I'm always just reminded that. I mean, I think this Easter was big for me. I think I've been pretty, not checked out, but pretty disconnected from the main core of the team. I'm part of some meetings, not a part of others. And then Easter was just one of those weekends where I just have to be a part of it. It's just so beautiful and so, I think, uplifting and amazing to see. But it was really great. It felt like Mosaic has built its momentum back. And it's been a long journey since COVID.
Yeah, I went back and checked because I don't really have a good sense of chronology. And so I thought it's been 5 years since the quarantine came to an end.
No.
But it's actually only been, to Easter, it was 2 years and 20 days.
Since they like officially said.
March 31st, 2023 was the end of the LA quarantine.
Yeah.
And if you're listening from other parts of the country or other parts of the world, we were quarantined here for about 18 months. And the reason I distinguish between saying it's the end of the pandemic is that we were not quarantined until the end of the pandemic. We were quarantined until the end of the quarantine.
Right.
There's a difference. You know, it wasn't the pandemic that shut us down for 18 months. It was really the legal system here in Los Angeles, the government. Yeah. Florida was shut down for about a week, I think it was. Yeah. Oklahoma, just a couple of days. And here we were 18 months, and it's really hard to recover as an organization. I mean, a lot of businesses went out of business. A lot of restaurants went out of business. A lot of people just basically packed up and left California.
Or just couldn't keep
it just couldn't make it work.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. And so when we started again 2 years ago, it was like starting from scratch, and I had to start all over again. And that was a real incredible challenge. And so this Easter was so satisfying to see thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people gather around all our different campuses and connect to the message of Jesus. It was just really, really beautiful.
It's amazing.
And
What's cool too is seeing all the other churches around the world just building what they're like, doing what they do, and building their churches and building their communities, and it's just so exciting. I think for us, we've just been able to connect with so many amazing people globally, and seeing this like one Sunday and this one big weekend, and where everyone comes together and kind of, you know, I think church is so unique because there's so many different expressions of faith, especially in Christianity. So many denominations, so many different ways of doing it and styles, and you know, and just in this part of town, there's not that many churches. There's a lot of synagogues. There's a lot of temples. There's not a lot of churches, and so it's really special when an Easter Sunday comes around and you get to do things and then see how other churches do it, and there's always those like ridiculous, you know. I saw you sending me stuff, and it's always unique. Like I think that like one, not ridiculous in a bad way, but like I think Elevate Life did like a drone show outside.
yeah,
The Texas churches always go to a different level.
Yeah, I sent him a note just to ask him how Easter went. He sent me this video of this drone spectacular that they did outdoors, and crazy what people are doing. I'm going, man, I felt so
old school,
so primitive.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, I think it can sometimes get out of hand, but what I do love is that it's a special weekend, and people will come in who don't normally come through, and it was fun. And then honestly, like what's so unique is Mosaic is global now. And it's always been a movement that's been, I think, acknowledged and respected globally, and identified with so many different cultures around the world. And LA is such a transient city that, you know, you've been here for 40 years now, 35 years.
33, yeah.
And so many people have come through Mosaic and scattered around the world, and whether it started at other churches or being a part of other organizations. It's really beautiful to see that, you know, we have a church in Mexico City that's doing so well. And it's had such a hard year, and it's doing so well. And you have a church in Quito, Ecuador.
And they are crushing down there.
And they are crushing. Amazing. And they've built this like beautiful bubble dome out of this like, it looks like Elon designed their church to be on Mars. Like it's so unique and bizarre and cool. It's like this white, like inflatable tent dome thing, right? Where they can pump in AC and heat, but then it's like year round. It's actually a building, but it's so fascinating. And Andres and that team is doing amazing, and Luis in Mexico City, and Bore and that crew. And then you've got London, which is newer, and it's.
And I love McLaren.
I love McLaren Lewis,
and he's leading there and working hard. It's really beautiful to see the community coming together.
Yeah, and I mean it's so interesting too, because he started this. He came on team about a year and some change ago. But really, it's taken him a year to get the banking, to get the boards, to get all of the like.
It's not easy.
No, it's not. And I remember when we started Mexico City, it wasn't easy there either. Legally, it was impossible to get that thing started. I think it took us 3 or 4 years to get nonprofit status. Like it was complicated.
And half the time, I can't tell what's actually fake news or real news about England, because it seems like they've made it illegal to pray. Not only just publicly, but in your head, if you're a Christian. And
wait, what is that? A real thing?
There's some laws that have been passed.
Wait, is that real? We gotta fact check that.
Yeah, fact check that. I was going to ask McLaren, because I've seen so much on this, and I've seen it both from some British press and English press. And a person was arrested they asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Praying in my head." And he said, "What?" And then they arrested them. And what's fascinating to me is you are watching a cultural shift in England from a historically Christian nation to an emerging Islamic nation, which is really interesting.
It was banning prayer outside of abortion clinics.
Yeah, but you can't stand there and pray to yourself. Silent prayer is a crime.
It seems like the greater UK is having an identity crisis as a whole, right? And I don't want to speak to it because I think I don't know enough. And
No, but I'd be curious what McLaren
no, for sure. I'm
thinks
saying
about this and how it's affecting them. And
we should absolutely get some of those guys out there that we love and know and just hear, because we get updated so differently every time we're out there because they're figuring it out and stuff's changing all the time. Because I think it went and had a progressive movement for a little bit, and then it's kind of feels like it's gone it went really conservative for 16 years, and now it's kind of back to being more liberal.
It's amazing how many mayors and civic leaders in England are now Muslims.
It is really interesting.
And it doesn't seem that there's a resistance against Islam as much as there's a resistance against Christianity.
Yeah.
So it'll be curious to see. I'm glad we're there.
We've talked a lot about politics off and on in the years, and definitely in election cycle years. But one clip that one of our guys, I won't name him, posted last week, that it was not a great clip of me. What did I talk about? Well, I was talking about the Bezos and Zuck and Elon and these guys integrating the government. I've said that about 20 times before over the years, saying like we should get these really intelligent, genius level
I saw
people.
That one. You got hit on that one?
What are you talking about? That's what you said. Like, hey, bro, you called me and were like, hey, you need to relax.
But I didn't know where the hate was coming from.
It was coming from that post.
That post is so innocuous.
What do you mean innocuous? I got 300 comments. Like, I got.
I mean, it's a good post. What I mean is,
no, it's not a good post. It's not a good post.
Not a good post.
It's a terrible quote. I sound like a raging idiot. 259 comments. You want to hear the best ones? My weekend was fun. Let's see. I got no advertising. What?
On TikTok.
Oh no! I haven't even gotten to TikTok. I'm just talking. Oh no, I've seen the TikTok. Why don't you stay off drugs? That's one of them. Bro, this is exactly what we don't want. Hypercapitalism does not lead to innovation. This is extraordinarily naive. You can't possibly think these people have intentions for the good of humanity. This morning, I woke up to this one from Thomas Samuel. This dude really said into a mic with a camera recording, reviewed it, clipped it, and posted it, and said, I sound smart. Is this satire? There's no way this man gets laid. Yeah. This is a joke, right?
I thought one of them said, please don't procreate.
Yeah. That one said, please don't procreate. And then under it said, there's no way this man gets laid. So let's go to TikTok real quick and just roll some of those. It's gnarly. I saw it the other day and I was like, okay, too much for today. 78,000. Oh, we went viral. That's a little viral. 1,000% tariff on podcasting equipment, please. 2,000 hearts. Ding ding, you have won the comment of the day. I lost IQ points listening to your voice. This has to be like a skit, right? This guy isn't serious. Make podcast mics rare again. Oh, dang. Yeah. Why isn't SpongeBob taking over the Department of Motor Vehicles?
But clearly because he doesn't drive.
Oh, I got one that said, you were left behind by George Bush in the No Kid Left Behind movement. That's not, you're laughing at me? Dang, that's what you called me about, and you were like, "Hey, buddy, I think maybe let's not engage."
Well, no, I wasn't upset.
Let's talk about it.
I wasn't upset about their comments. I just didn't want you to fight back.
This is it. George Bush left this kid behind, and I said, and took your hair with him.
Yes, things like that. I'm going.
He responded, "Bro, you don't know anything about what you were saying. Go back to co-hosting Your Daddy." And I said, I bet you call a few people daddy. And then I posted it to stories, and then you called me and said, I don't know if that's like the vibe we should be putting out into the world.
Well, I mean, the Bible is so clear that when you argue with a fool, you become one.
Okay.
And you're arguing with fools.
But also for the numbers. For the numbers, like,
all right, I just can't handle the stress.
You can't handle the stress, and I, we talked about it. Your clip went viral too. Dang, hey, TikTok's doing good. Hey, we're on TikTok, Mindshift Pod, at Mindshift
I was
Pod.
going to say, I actually don't even look at my comments because it's not good for me psychologically.
How'd you know? What?
No, but
Oh no, it's just me.
I just never
Sound like an
never
idiot.
know when I'm going to get hate. So if you're looking for the love, you're just setting yourself up for the hate when it comes.
Yeah.
And so I don't actually look at the comments, but people do DM me their hate comments. And that's when it actually starts making me anxious. I'm going,
What I don't understand, like, one, my guy, you left me out to dry. I sound crazy in this clip. I said it. I'm not blaming you, but
you approved it.
look, here's the deal. I look at it like this. One, if a clip makes me look bad, that's fine because I said it. So we're gonna go with it. And then down the line, like, if something affects my future, or they were like, look at this clip that you said in 2025, I'm gonna look and go, look, it was Jacob's fault. He cut it up. He used AI. I didn't say it.
Here's the thing. It tells you what people's assumptions are. So your assumption is that Bezos, Zuck, Musk, Jobs, Cook, that all these people have unique intelligences that should be used to make the government and the world better. So actually your assumption is that there's some inherent good in these people and there's a contribution that can be made. Their assumption is that because they're rich, they're all evil. And if they're evil, you don't want them anywhere near government. And what's fascinating to me is that the very people who want government to pay their bills are the very people who hate the people who actually pay their bills. Because government does not pay your bills. Our taxes pay your bills. And our taxes come from our own economic generative capacity. And so if you hate the people who create wealth, go get a job and stop depending on the government.
That's a clip that's going to get us flamed, but let's roll with it. Billionaires, billionaires, billionaires. You hate me when I talk about billionaires, but here's the thing. I don't think all billionaires have a collective good. I think Bezos created Amazon. And how the greatest part about the comments are the conversation. A lot of them have to do with the conversation around Amazon and the unions and how inefficient Amazon is. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about scale. And these billionaires, what they are good at is managing scale.
And knowing how to reduce costs.
And a lot of times in our government, we have people like Karen Bass or Gavin Newsom who are inefficient and not great at working with government at scale. We have large states. California is a gigantic state. It has a gigantic GDP. What is it? Like, we're top 50 in the GDP across the world, I believe. Do not clip that if it's wrong. But we have a large economy, right? That is getting smaller and smaller the longer Gavin Newsom stays in power, and the reality of that. But I look at it and I go, I don't think the billionaires are inherently good. They're inherently good at scaling companies and managing large amounts of employees and hiring the top of their field. So they're good at something, right? And why would we not want to take the greatest minds inside of our culture at this point in history and bring them and weaponize them in a positive manner to make our government more efficient?
Yeah, but it just seems like it's so much smarter to take lesser minds, which are called politicians.
Yes.
And give them the responsibility and the power to shape our future and our government. It's absurd to me to act like somehow Bezos is more inherently evil than
Bernie?
Than Gavin Newsom.
AOC?
I'm going, can you not see
Nancy
that
Pelosi.
These people are made of the same material, except that this person has a genius to create wealth and this one has a genius to create bureaucracy? I do not trust politicians. I'm just going to say it straight up. When I don't necessarily inherently trust any of these people, but I can look at a billionaire and go, they've actually created something that is measurable. I look at a politician and I go, they've created nothing that is measurable. They've only managed what we created, and they call it their budget. And so I'm not really sure what the thinking is, where the intellectual like volume comes from thinking that politicians are better running governments than business people.
Here's the irony for me.
And we're not even supposed to be talking about politics.
We're not, but we're in it again, and definitely not supposed to be talking about billionaires, because every time we talk about billionaires, I get a lot of comments, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan. Here's the irony of it. I said I'm not a fan of Zuck and Bezos and those guys.
No, I'm not necessarily a fan, but I think I can look at it and go, the irony of people hating me in the comments on Instagram about Zuck being great at creating community is that they're on a meta product that is owned by Zuck, commenting about Zuck. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, the only reason they can hate on you is that their lives are dependent on the people they hate.
and a lot of my responses, the less negative ones, which if you look at my comments from the Mindshift admin account, it's satire. It's satire. That's how I grew the original Battle Ready podcast account that switched into the Mindshift account. It's always satirical.
Yes.
It's a little caustic. I jab back. But a part of it is like when you get called, an idiot for a few weeks at a time, a year, something happens to you. Some screws do get loose and you just start going, let's have fun with this.
Okay. When people say to you, please don't procreate, you kind of do have a carte blanche to respond any way you want.
A little. And I was going deep. Like, the irony is that anytime we post a clip like this or anything talking about conservative values, it's always pushed to a left audience on Meta.
They do push your comments to the left so that there's a lot of hate.
It's an outrage culture. It's a rage culture.
So they push mine to the right so I can get a lot of hate?
I don't know. But like one of the most ironic things, and then someone posted this in the IG comments, was the internet can't handle the McManus family being conservatives. And I said, it's so much deeper than that, because it isn't about us being conservatives. I think we've gone back and forth on some of our viewpoints, and we always have said this in the Battle Ready days, we reserve the right to change our minds. I was talking to you about this yesterday going, this is what I believe right now, but the tables can turn, the tides can shift, and new politicians can come out, bad policies can start being implemented, and then I might change my opinion and my perspective, and I'm not going to let anyone hold me to these clips.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is that when people try to identify or define where I am on a political, cultural level, people are almost always wrong. And in fact, I'm going to shift it from politics just to faith. One of the guys that I actually helped come to faith, who was Jewish and Buddhist, he was with one of the most famous pastors in the United States, one of the two largest churches in America. And somehow I came up in the conversation, and that pastor said, well, Erwin McManus is a Buddhist.
Oh yeah.
And that pastor's in the South.
Have you met him?
No, I don't know.
Everything I know about him, I like.
I didn't even know he knew about me, so I that part I'm excited about. Yeah. But so he said Erwin McManus is a Buddhist, and then the person responded, no, Erwin McManus is all about Jesus. He brought me to faith. And he goes, oh, that makes sense that he would be the one, since you were.
He had a background in
Buddhism.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is that if him and I sat down and talked, we would both believe the same thing about Jesus. But his path to Jesus is probably a very linear, didactic, A to B to C to D, and that's the way he thinks. That's what makes him a genius in his own right. And my path is A to Q to M to L to B
you have a very non-linear path.
Yeah, and so because my way of thinking is so different than theirs, they conclude that I cannot possibly hold the same position. I just think that the way a lot of people come to their conclusions is not very thoughtful or very textured or very complex. So I always begin with the arguments of the person who's furthest away from me. So if I hold a particular position, I begin that conversation from the other side, which people confuse as being in that other position. And And it really is, for me, is that I try to begin with understanding. I want to make sure people understand the other side of it. And I want to understand the other side. And if I can't get to my position from the other side, it's not a very good position. And so it's my way of thinking that's actually different. And so it's funny. It's not my belief in Jesus that makes me different. It's my belief in reality that makes me different. We have the same Jesus. We have different realities.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you just speak a unique language around the scriptures, around faith. You take out a lot of the Christianese, you take out a lot of the commonality of language that other Christians have. And sometimes, and I've pushed back on you because I've gone, there are certain, like all tribes have a communal language.
Yes, they do.
You just don't like the larger tribe's communal language.
I just don't necessarily even like the tribe.
But you wouldn't.
I just think it's a really dogmatic, judgmental, condemning, narrow-minded, simplistic tribe.
Have you ever been dogmatic, narrow-minded, simplistic?
No.
Have you ever been judgmental?
No, but I've been wrong.
Oh, no, you've judged me. I know you have.
I make judgments. It's different than being judgmental.
Explain that to mom. No, fair. I do think a lot of people don't know what bucket to put you in.
Yeah.
And so that becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to, I was in a coffee yesterday with a guy who's in town from Nashville, and he was like, it took me a second to even put together that MSC was connected to Mosaic. And I'm like, it's in the Instagram. It's in the bio of the Spotify. On every record, it says, MSC is a part of a larger thing called Mosaic. You tend to, well, okay, all that aside, let's put politics away for a little season and let's dive into.
Yeah, I was actually talking more about faith.
Okay.
And because like one of the things that people, can actually use as a way of expressing their own disagreement is, well, you're just, you're watering down the gospel. That's a phrase I've heard. You're watering down the gospel. The truth is actually we're going deeper into the ocean and not staying at the surface. And I find a lot of people who use the language of you're watering down the gospel are very superficial in their understanding of reality. And I actually think that the scriptures, that the message of Jesus, and that the human dilemma deserves deeper conversations. And sometimes when we go deep, I think a lot of people are afraid to lose their faith. Because if you go deep, you're asking deep, profound human questions. And I actually think that's where you really come to know truth. And that's where you really come to know God.
Is in your questions.
Yeah.
The kind of questions that you ask.
Yeah.
That you ask of God or that you ask around your faith.
Yeah, I mean, the man that God chose to name the nation of Israel after is Jacob. And he wrestled with God. He fought God. And quote won, although I think the fight was fixed.
Right.
You can't win a fight against God unless God wants you to win it. But he wrestled with God, and I think a lot of people are afraid to wrestle with God. And you may come out limping, but you'll come out alive. And I just think that I'm designed in a way where I'm going to always wrestle with God. And I think that's a good place to be at.
And I do think it's always ironic. There's a lot of unique rhythms in our relationship, I think, with the larger church as a whole.
Yeah.
It's usually the kids of the people that end
Yes.
up going to their dads and going, I love Erwin's books, or I love Erwin's messages, or I've listened to the podcast for years. You got to check them out. And I mean, that's how you got introduced to the entire Pentecostal world was, you had come from a more Baptist background, a different stream of maybe a demographic or an audience.
Of
Christianity. And I think, it's changed over the years. And one of the things that, even looking at guys who don't do it anymore, one of the things I think that's kept you so consistent over the years, I asked you on the drive to Calabasas and
Mhm.
was hilarious because never in LA is 1 mile equal to 1 minute.
Oh my goodness. This drive on Easter was a rare moment.
It was roughly 35 miles from Hollywood, where we all live and are around, to the Calabasas campus.
It was like
And
35 minutes to get 35 miles. I've
and
never seen that here.
and at one point, when I Google mapped it, you hopped
Mhm.
in the car,
Yeah.
like you got your coffee and we had your clothes, and Austin was in the back, and
Mhm.
he shot some BTS of the day, because
Mhm.
I think the older we get, the more life we live, the more I realize how much content is important to
Mhm.
show, just the story of what we do and how we do it. But he jumped in and I go, let me put the maps in, and I mapped friends' houses
Mhm.
that were nearby, because I didn't have the actual location
Mhm.
address. No, actually I did. Elisa sent
Yeah.
it to me. Click it, and it's 30 miles exact.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is insane. And it said 30 minutes. And then we got on the freeway, and at one point it said 29 miles, 27 minutes. And I was
Yeah.
like, never in my life have I experienced a one-to-one ratio. But it was fun to be out there traveling around, starting new
Mhm.
campuses on one of the biggest days of the year for us. And why is starting new campuses around the world so important for you?
Well, I didn't expect that question.
Do you not want to talk about it?
No, that's good. That's a good question, actually. Um, the first thing that actually came to my mind is um, I'm 66 years old. I do feel like I'm probably at the last chapter of the level of intensity that I've given to the church. For probably 15 years ago, all my friends told me, "Hey, it's your sage chapter of life, not your warrior chapter of life." And I told them, "You don't understand how comfortable the sword is in my hand."
Yeah.
So 15 years later, I'm still in the warrior chapter of my life, but I do know that eventually I'm going to move into more of the sage chapter, where I'm speaking to broader things around the world. But I feel like I have a few years to help create communities of faith around the world that are uniquely relevant for people who are outliers, who are entrepreneurs, who are more inclined toward imagination, innovation, entrepreneurship, change. And for whatever reason, I think God has given me a unique voice for those people,
Yeah.
and an ability to create a unique community for them. So if I have 5 years or 10 years, I don't know how long I have. I want to give myself fully to try to create these kind of communities in every major city in the world we can.
Yeah. I love it. And I think it's really special. And I think we have a very different approach.
Mhm.
I think Mosaic's really such a well-known thing around the world, but still
Yeah.
so much more unknown than most.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we carry a lot of unique, authentic influence, but with a lot of room to grow and a lot of potential. And I think we're looked at as a mega church, but really we're so much more boutique than real mega churches. When you go Life Church or Church of the Highlands in Birmingham,
Yeah.
or even a VU Church in Miami, or Elevation, you have these churches that are 10,000 plus people.
They're massive. Yeah.
And we've just never been able to do that in one location in LA.
Yeah.
The city isn't really built like that. But
Well, I think there's several things. One is that when people would say to me, and they said it to me 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, is Mosaic going to be a mega church? And I would always explain to them that you think a mega church is based on size, but it's actually based on value systems. We will never be a mega church because our core values aren't around standardization. And mega churches work because you treat people in a more homogenous, standardized way.
Yeah.
And so you create a brilliant system in which people are taken care of in a positive way.
Yeah.
But they're also organized and mobilized. And our core values are more around human uniqueness and human standardization. It's more around the boutique expression of beauty and wonder and humanity and artistry, and not the megachurch values that really deal with being more utilitarian, more efficient. And so when you go to a megachurch, you feel it. You know exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
And you can go to a church that's smaller and has the megachurch values already.
Yeah.
And you can go to any expression of Mosaic, no matter how large it is,
Yeah.
and it still feels boutique-y.
Yeah.
It still feels very unique. There's a higher value for raw beauty than maybe even excellence, which I think is a good value as well. And so that's one of the differences, I think, in Mosaic. So even with every campus, each one feels differently. Each one has a different kind of uniqueness and expression. And the gifts and talents and culture of each campus is affected by the people who are there.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I think this has been one of those episodes that's a little lighter, maybe a little funnier, maybe a little bit more just like a catch-up episode for us. But I'm really, really excited to dive into the future things that we have on the business, the future stuff that we have with the church, and also build out kind of the next chapter of this podcast that we've been kind of envisioning and dreaming about the last few weeks. So I'm I want to invite all of you guys to stay tuned and stay connected, to rate and review the podcast. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok now.
Oh, wow. I do want you to send what questions in the Bible do you have that are really pressing in your life? Or if you don't believe in God, what are the questions that, if you could have them answered in a meaningful way, would make you more open to God? Or what are the fascinating questions in the Bible you feel like still are unanswered? And we'll dive into some of those.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Mindshift podcast. Rate and review this pod. Subscribe and follow on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. And let us know what your thoughts are, whether it's politics, faith, spirituality, or questions about God that you might have. Check us out next Friday for a new episode of the Mindshift pod. Thanks, Dad.
Hey, thank you.